So in a second, I'm going to talk about what went wrong with Kirk Cousins, but first, just wanted to let everyone know I will be going live on Twitch tonight. My new schedule is going to be Tuesday nights and Saturday afternoons. On Tuesdays, it's 9 p.m. to 11 p.m. That's Eastern Time. The link to my Twitch is in the description below. I'm going to be watching the Rams and the Eagles play each other along with the Ravens and Texans, both of those two games. So be sure to check that out when I go live in just a few hours. And anyways, back to your regularly scheduled video. So Kirk Cousins was bad. Like, that is totally fair to say. Kirk Cousins had an abysmal day. And you know what? Let's just get into it, and we'll start things off with this play. So this is a cover 2 zone coverage play. You have a couple receivers running routes that are going to try to get into a gap in coverage. What's worth noting about this play is the atrocious shadows. I know the shadows are a mess. I hate Lucas Oil Field just because of the shadows. It's a great stadium outside of that, but the shadows drive me crazy. So that's going to be a frustrating thing we're going to have to deal with throughout this video, but I really wanted to make a video on it just because of how interesting I think this is. So again, keep in mind what the routes are. They're going to be cutting a little bit to the bottom of the screen, and what you notice is that right when this play starts, which player would you most like to throw the ball to? Well, and again, the two Vikings are in yellow, the two Indianapolis players are in the black circles. Again, kind of trying to color code it, make it as easy as possible for you guys to see what's going on. But out of the two Vikings players circled in yellow, who would you probably want to throw it to? You'd want to throw it to the guy closer to the bottom of the screen. The reasoning for this is because he is behind the Indianapolis player who could potentially cover him, meaning that that Indianapolis player, the one closest to the bottom of the screen that's in the black circle, he could potentially cover either Minnesota player, but there's also another Indianapolis player covering the Minnesota player on top, meaning the one on bottom is going to be wide open. However, Cousins is just going to make this wrong decision, and it could have easily been intercepted. Now, this play in a vacuum is not a big deal, right? It's not a great play, but not a big deal. However, I think this is the real microcosm of what went wrong really for Kirk Cousins. A lot of Kirk Cousins' problems were all upstairs. It was all mental. I actually don't think Kirk Cousins deserves like all of the blame for this game. He obviously deserves some blame, no doubt about it. But there's definitely other guys to blame as well, other things to blame as well. But if I'm giving one big X factor for Cousins, or X mark for Cousins, it's the fact that he just did not make good decisions, and this one will be another one. It's going to be a cover 2 zone. They have a receiver running that could get into a gap in coverage, and this is a lot of what Indianapolis does, by the way. It's just they like to play a lot of zone coverage, and I mean, really, I think that's where this Minnesota Vikings team has struggled the most, is against these types of schemes that are basically just zone a lot of the way. But anyways, as you see, once this play starts, this is a pretty decent situation right here. Now, another Minnesota player stopped a little bit short, so he's drawing in the Indianapolis player. So now another player can run over the middle. He can potentially get open. There is a gap there. Of course, this is risky, and the last thing you want to do is throw an interception while standing in your own end zone. That is just not a good idea. But of course, the flip side of this is that if you do end up, deciding to hold on to the ball, you have to figure something out quickly because, again, you're in your own end zone. So Cousins, he's going to decide to not make this throw. I can't kill him for that necessarily because it was a pretty, dangerous throw. What I can kill him for is what he's going to do next, which is nothing. He just basically stands there. He's going to go down, get sacked, and it's a safety. And to me, that's just a mistake. I mean, you gotta get rid of that ball. If you're not gonna throw the ball in that direction, then you have to throw it away, and you have to know where you're gonna throw it away so you don't get a grounding call. And he's just not thinking like those 2 and 3 steps ahead, and it's a real problem. I do think it's fair to blame the Minnesota coaching staff a lot in this game and say they never trusted Cousins. There were so many run, pass situations. They were so often running on first down and then running on second down, and it was really infuriating to watch, especially when I already knew what happened. And there was even like a 3rd down and 9 that they're handing the ball off, and just didn't make a lot of sense, quite frankly. However, the reason why they weren't trusting Cousins was because Cousins was making poor decisions, and they decided they didn't trust Cousins, which, in my opinion, I honestly believe I don't care how bad your starting quarterback is. In today's NFL, if you don't trust your quarterback, you lose. And I think that there's a big reason why they lost. But again, I'm not letting Cousins off the hook either because he did make some mistakes. Even some of his better plays, you could argue he should have done better. Like on this one, it's a cover 2 zone. He has a tight end who's going to kind of fake as though he's going to the outside, then run over the middle. That's the way this play is going to work. It's a pretty good play against this coverage. It's going to work out. He gets a tight end open, but Cousins lets a lot of air under this, which does allow a defensive player to run in, deliver a big hit, and knock the ball out. Now, I would still argue that should have been a catch, so I'm not going to kill Cousins for it. But at the end of the day, again, it's those little things. It's like he will often, as good of a player as I do think Cousins can be at times, there are those little mistakes that good defenses can take advantage of. And there's a reason why we will see sometimes him just get completely destroyed by a good defense. And obviously, I'm not putting it all on him. But the Vikings offense as a whole can get destroyed by really good defenses. And that's partially why, because Cousins will do some small little things wrong. Like this one's another one. It's just a bad decision where it's going to be cover 2 zone. You have a couple of players who are going to be running routes that are crossing each other. And so in zone coverage, there's a couple of things you can do here. For one, I mean, typically what you do, honestly, is you just sort of pass each other off. The one player runs to the middle, one player runs to the outside. You just sort of switch and take on the other guy. But you don't have to do that if you don't want to. You can basically just switch your own zone, and that can be a good decision sometimes. And that's actually what Indianapolis is going to do. Like, as you see, clearly at this point, they have decided they are switching positions. The benefit of this, of course, is that typically when you don't do this, there's a little slither where both of those guys are open. But in this instance, that is not going to be the case. However, this is not a bad situation for Minnesota. What do? You hit the player who is closer to the, he's on the right. That's the one you want to hit. But I think Cousins just misread this. He saw it was zone. He thought that someone abandoned their assignment and he was going to have a wide open player. He makes this throw anyways. And that could have easily been a pick 6, quite frankly. I mean, Darius Leonard he's not the kind of guy who lets you make those types of throws too often. That could have easily been an interception. It could have potentially been a pick 6. And, sometimes very small mistakes can lead to some very bad situations. I do have to be, I have to bring this up as well. You can't put it all on Cousins. And one thing that you have to mention is the fact that Cousins, he had very little time to throw the ball. A lot of the times, he didn't have a clean pocket whatsoever. There was a lot of rollouts, and even some of the times that he did have a clean pocket, it was only because he was getting rid of the ball so quickly, and it really makes things difficult on an offense. Like on this one, the receiver he wants to hit is the receiver who is lined up closest to the sideline, running over the middle. This could get into a gap in coverage, and the other receiver running a route that I have on the screen, that'll make the gap in coverage wider. So that's what Cousins wants to look at. And as you see, this does get open, but the problem is for Cousins, right when it gets open, Cousins is already in the process of going down. And actually, Kirk Cousins did a pretty good job of flipping the ball out to his halfback, trying to gain something. So, got a couple extra yards than you otherwise would have. But that's just a good example of, you can't really have these long-lasting plays simply because the offensive line can't hold up. And it affects him on plays where the offensive line isn't even doing anything wrong. Like on this one, it's against zone coverage. Receiver running is going to get into a gap in coverage. It's actually going to work out very well once this ball is snapped. But, as Cousins gets rid of this ball very quickly, it ends up getting, dropped and intercepted. It wasn't a bad throw. It wasn't a great throw, but it wasn't a disaster either. Just kind of bounces up and gets intercepted. And part of me does wonder if, Cousins did have to get rid of that ball in a hurry anyways. But I do also kind of wonder, his feet aren't totally planted. He's a little bit in a hurry, even more so than he has to be. He doesn't look comfortable out there. It might have just been he had to hurry to get through the gap. But either way, that's another one that's not on Cousins. And, again, I don't just show one play in isolation. I only talk about it if I've seen it a few times. And there definitely were a few times where Cousins was getting rid of the ball when he didn't have to. And that's just a problem. And the Vikings offense has a lot of deep-seated issues, I think. And they can get better, but it's going to take a lot. For one thing, quite frankly, their offensive line has to block better, and Cousins has to make better decisions. And they probably have to just play teams that aren't so good at zone coverage like the Colts are, because this just happens. We've seen it happen against the Bears too, which are another team that plays a lot of zone and has a good defense. And I just think this is a real issue for the Vikings. And, 0-2 isn't the end of the world, but the way they've looked, that's the real frustration. So yeah, that's what went into not just Kirk Cousins' bad day, but the entire Vikings offense in their bad day. Maybe one slight upside is that I thought that Dalvin Cook looked fine at times. One other thing I wanted to mention, should have mentioned this earlier, but clearly the fact that they were running the ball so often really hurt their running game, I think. I think they need to get a more balanced attack, and they need to pass to run more frequently, but as a whole, I thought this is a really good day for the Colts defense, abysmal day for the Vikings offense, and hopefully they can improve because, they're fun when they're good, but they're not good right now. So that's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.